It is time for another half hour of Hatteberg's People.
And coming up, we'll travel to 1982 Dodge City. Now, this local historian believed there were bodies buried in a local neighborhood. He was ready to start digging and set the record straight about Boot Hill Cemetery.
Then we'll fast forward to 1995 and discover how this elderly Marion couple kept a positive attitude in the face of poverty and disability. They were prepared to work till they died because they were out of options.
And you'll learn the ins and outs of this woman's shell game. Now, she had a fascination for Kansas mussels, not the kind you find in a gym, but the kind you would find in the water. Her hobby made her one of the state's leading experts on these curious creatures. Hi, everybody. I'm Larry Hatteberg.
And I'm Susan Peters. Those are just a few of Larry's classic stories that are queued up and ready to roll.
So let's get started. These stories are like old friends. Their lives radiate from the screen like prophets of the past. They were teachers, but not in a classroom. Instead, they taught about life to those around them who cared to listen, and I was their student.
It is one of the best-known places in Kansas, recognized around the world as an infamous rough-and-tumble shoot-'em-up town of the Old West.
Well, some of Dodge City's notorious history has been embellished and, of course, romanticized through the years. But it was indeed the scene of many gunfights back in the day.
100 years later, a man named Vic Hall claimed to have made a bombshell discovery about where some of the losers of those gunfights were buried.
For many a gunslinger of the 1870s, it was only a short distance between Dodge City's saloons and a cemetery called Boot Hill. Today, Boot Hill is big business. This replica of Front Street is visited by thousands of tourists every year, and Boot Hill is part of the legend. Problem is, there's no one buried here. The bones of the 27 cowboys, gunslingers, and others who made infamous history were moved from this site in 1879 to make way for construction. They were taken northeast of Dodge City to Prairie Grove Cemetery. In this 1889 photograph, the graves can be seen not in the cemetery, but in a potter's field outside the fence. Despicable characters like those taken from Boot Hill were not allowed in respectable town cemeteries. So time, grass fires in the rolling prairie soon destroyed the wooden markers, and the graves were forgotten. Forgotten, that is, if it weren't for Vic Hull.
I feel like that possibly back off over in there is the location as to where they were actually buried.
Historian Hull believes that in the backyards of some homes that line this alley in a residential area of Dodge City are buried the 27 bodies from Boot Hill.
From my early research, I think that it's undoubtedly the spot as to where they were reburied.
Hull brought us to this spot on the condition that we not reveal the location. The homeowners whose backyards may contain the graves are unaware of this discovery.
We want to dig in their backyards. What are they going to say, those people?
Yeah, well, we'll find out.
Back at Boot Hill, Hull talked with Boot Hill Museum Director Jim Scherer about moving those bones back to their original resting place.
If there is any possibility that it could happen, I feel it would be a very good thing, a very positive thing to have them brought back to where they were originally, and here at Boot Hill.
A historically accurate Boot Hill is what Hull and Scherer are after. But both believe this new discovery might cause some concern in this Old West town. Then again, perhaps it's only fitting, because it was through controversy that Boot Hill was born. Larry Hatteberg, TV 10 News in Dodge City.
Now, 37 years after I did that story, Boot Hill Museum Director Laura Brim tells us there may be something to what Vic Hull was claiming.
She says it's not possible to account for each and every body or know for sure where they all ended up. But while this may have been an issue in 1982, Vic is long gone now, and apparently so is any real concern over the whereabouts of all those graves. Our golden years can be our best years, sitting back and smelling the roses and reaping the rewards for decades of hard work.
But, and it's a big but, if you are broke and disabled, old age can feel like a curse that keeps getting worse with every passing day. Fortunately, the couple in this next story show us the difference a positive attitude can make when life hands you lemons.
Then I like the public. I've been with the public all my life, and I guess you can say that's the way I'll be the rest of my life.
Driving through the park at Marion Reservoir, George Jones works as the gatekeeper for the Corps of Engineers.
Of course, I paint yard ornaments all winter and all summer, and he saws them out, of course.
George's wife, Grace, helps him. Together, they are a team. As the seasons change, George and Grace look back on a life of tough breaks. When George was born 75 years ago, the doctor was on cocaine. During delivery, his right arm, eye, head, and ear were damaged. He has dealt with a severe handicap all his life.
I'm not bitter, and that's one thing about it.
We just feel a little bit cheated.
Larry, it don't get you anything to be bitter.
We talked with the Joneses at their little gatehouse, where George and Grace oversee Cottonwood Point campgrounds. Their only home is this trailer. At 75, George works because he has to. George and Grace can never retire.
I don't care to work. I mean, heck, I can work the rest of my life, and I ain't lying. That's yours, I think.
He's not happy unless he's doing something.
I'd be doing something. If I wasn't working, I'd be doing something.
Because of his handicap, for 30 years, George had no insurance, no pension plan, no nothing. He was only hired for low-paying jobs with no future, and he had little education.
On Thanksgiving Day, we were on the road. I had some canned strawberry preserves that we had with us. We had, for Thanksgiving dinner, we had strawberry preserves on bread for our Thanksgiving dinner, and he was just in tears practically. I said, George, I'm happy we've got something to eat.
Like many others in a life that isn't always fair, George and Grace have continued on, looking for little successes.
I have the love of every one of my campers, and I'm proud to say that. Really and truthful, it's a living to the point of not having to really get out and kill myself. And that's just plainly speaking.
The Joneses are nice folks, and they are like a lot of elderly people whose lives are made difficult by events of which they had no control. Grace and George will always work to survive, always just to survive.
No, we can't unless we get a windfall or win the lottery. Oh, I'd love to win that lottery.
The Joneses see others living well, getting raises, enjoying thick pensions, but they do not travel down that same road. Their road to retirement has no ending.
The other morning we encountered 25 pheasants right over here on the corner.
Well, that was 23 years ago, and we don't know what ever became of George and Grace other than they presumably kept working as long as they could.
If you know, please send us an email, hattebergspeople@kpts.org.
It's so much fun to meet those kind of people because even though their circumstances were a bit dire, they kept on keeping on.
It's what life is all about.
It
and
is.
They're probably we're happier than any of us.
Probably so, yeah.
Okay, now to a senior who didn't keep working because she had to. She worked because she wanted to help people.
Yeah, for some 30 years, Marilyn Linn did other people's taxes, and she did it for free.
You'll find her on the golf course.
It's a good game that you can play all your life.
You'll find her at Episcopal Social Services.
Got my date of disability, which was February 1st, 2003. I talked to the guy named John.
Marilyn Linn is a Wichita volunteer who for the past 29 years has helped people with disabilities do their taxes for free.
I think that anytime you help someone, you not only help them, but you help yourself.
While tax forms propose mind-numbing questions, Marilyn is undaunted as she prepares tax returns for those who need assistance.
I like to be able to help other people.
Smaller numbers, of course, more popular on the golf course, and when she's not volunteering, she's involved in the Kansas Women's Golf Association. She even founded junior golf at Sim Park back in 1966.
This is what it is.
But it's here where she found her niche as a volunteer tax preparer.
Was only $14.
A woman who people with disabilities appreciate.
So you'll be getting back this amount.
Oh.
For those living on an average of $580 a month, Marilyn gets back, on average, for each person, $370.
Well, it looks like that's it.
In perspective, a huge refund.
And if you'll date it too. They become your friends. 7. They know me by the tax lady. And they want the tax lady because I'm going to get them refund. I'm going to get them some money.
So either relaxing on the golf course.
Thank you, Marilyn.
You're welcome.
Or using her IRS-trained abilities. Marilyn Linn is one of many volunteers in Wichita using her talents to make a difference in someone's life.
Marilyn kept doing taxes into her 85th year. Then in 2017, she unexpectedly passed away. But she worked on those taxes for free just to help people, you know.
How many lives did she touch just by doing taxes?
Yeah, and you know, it makes you feel bad because you look at your own life and you say, what am I doing?
What have I done?
Yeah, we can always admire the work she did.
I hear you, Larry. Okay, she doesn't sell seashells by the seashore, but she does collect them, draw them, and write about them.
I'm surprised you said that.
I know,
That's amazing.
me too.
Well, her fascination with Kansas mollusks turned Karen Couch from a mere hobbyist into an expert. Here's what she was up to in 1994.
This is fun. I guess there's a certain amount of adventure involved, and you never know what you're going to see or find.
A stream near Cedar Point, Kansas provides the place.
Of course, it's always easy to get your feet wet.
Karen Couch of Newton provides the reason.
If you can take the time to look at things and look at the detail and think about what they are and where they came from, I think it enhances our life.
In this remote stream bed, Karen is pursuing her hobby of shell collecting.
Yeah, look at that. This is a mussel. I'm not sure exactly which species it is, but it's been in the water for quite a while.
Well, these are common in Kansas, but Karen is not common in her love of shells. At home, she has 4,000 from all over the world, 2,200 different species. Plus, she is one of very few who now specializes in shell art.
I like the detail. Seashells are little pieces of art in themselves, and they're so variable. You can see one and then see another, and it's different.
For being landlocked, her collection is huge.
There's probably more shell collectors in Kansas than we realize.
She's received awards for her collection from all over the nation, a collection that began when she was 8. Playing with snails and clams, her interest grew.
I was a mud ball. My mother did a lot of laundry.
Her pictures are technical in detail, but behind her art is a child.
I never completely grew up. I think maybe none of us do, but we may not know that. It's fun to still be a kid.
And she is not your usual collector. Folks tell her she doesn't even look like one.
Everybody says that. What does a shell collector look like? I think it's more what you think than what you look like.
She's right. Karen thinks a lot about shells, about life.
I see things with the eyes of an artist, which I guess is probably why I like shells. But then I guess I look at these from a little bit of a scientific aspect too. I guess I'm a little bit of both.
On Nature's Palette, we get the picture of Karen, shells in one hand, a searching eye, and a skeptical question. So you're a shell collector.
Yeah, this is the real me. Whatever you see, when you get me out here, this is me. Yeah, definitely.
Well, 25 years later, Karen has written a couple of books and continues to collect and talk about Kansas shells. She's a unique woman.
You wouldn't think of Kansas as a place where there are shells.
Seashells.
But we have a lot of shells.
And mollusks.
And
That's
guess
hard to
what?
say.
Kansas used to be under an ocean.
That's
You
right.
know that.
I know that. If you go up the Flint Hills, You can see the ripples of the hills, which were the ocean bottom.
You're
So
kidding.
interesting. No, I've got pictures.
A little bit of trivia there.
I got pictures.
Love it. I'd love to see it sometime. By the way, she also took her shell hunting overseas to places such as Australia and South Africa. So she's not only in Kansas, she's everywhere.
She is everywhere, and I love those unique people
I know
that
you do.
populate our state.
Thank you, Lair. Okay, here's another critter lover. This guy has a passion for reptiles.
Yeah, Marty Capron from Oxford sees snakes and lizards as amazing creations of beauty, and they are an inspiration for his art.
Just real flowing, you know, the color, the texture, and the way they move and everything. It's really an all-round beauty. I raised them from babies, of course, so they're a lot like kids.
Marty Capron isn't the guy next door. Marty's life is that of a naturalist, studying reptiles and creating art from their beauty.
It's sometimes seemed like a difficult way to make a living, but I think it's worked out real well now. I think it definitely is the way I'm supposed to be going.
Marty is one of those unique men who's always known who he is and what he wants to do.
I could never see myself working at a desk job or much anything else. It really helps you relax when you're outside looking at all these things and looking for these things in interesting places. And this is an Australian blue-tongued skink. It's so beautiful, and all these things are so interesting, and it makes a lot more sense to me than video games or a lot of the things people do.
This was Marty back in 1977 when he was still in high school. His passion for reptiles clearly visible.
Handled them all my life. Grew up with them.
Now, nearly 30 years later, throughout his home, he's still passionate about all kinds of reptiles, like this corn snake, or these turtles that winter on his back porch, or this giant lizard that keeps a watchful eye on visitors. Well, whatever the animal, Marty makes them come alive through his art, like these rattlesnakes.
It's a mixture of pride in knowing what you're doing, knowing your subject matter intimately and how that reflects in the artwork, being fully aware and happy with your abilities to do what you're doing. That's why I specialize in reptiles and bugs and fish and things, because that's what I know the most about.
Marty has illustrated several books on reptiles and fish, and for him their beauty is more than skin deep.
And seeing it from the artwork, how beautiful those animals are, and appreciation for how beautiful they are, it makes it easier for people to appreciate the beauty in those creatures.
This sensitive, low-key artist knows who he is and what he wants out of life. And what he wants is the rest of us to enjoy the world he draws, nature at its most beautiful.
He's real comfortable sitting there.
Now, Marty is still in Oxford, not doing quite as much art these days, but still devoted to his slippery creatures.
Lately, he's been traveling to the Amazon in Peru to study reptiles and amphibians and how depletion of the rainforest is affecting them. So he's not only studying them, but how our environment really affects them.
He is, and you know, it's such a small world. I did a story on him when he was in high school.
No.
I did a story with him when he was in high school, and then like 40 years later, I did that story that you just watched, and it's just fun to see how his interest in reptiles has just really taken over his life.
Isn't that cool?
It's fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, way back when, you've got to believe that the pioneers who settled Kansas were one tough group. The wind, the heat, the hail, the tornadoes. Our predecessors were cut from some mighty tough cloth.
Boy, were they ever. That same kind of grit was shared by John Hogue of Towanda more than a century later. He set out to cross the state from north to south the way it was done in the olden days. Take a look at this story from 1998.
When you think of the Old West, cowboys, and the way life used to be, then think of John Hogue.
I like to work, period.
Born in the wrong century and cut of rough cloth, this man has yet to find life's barriers.
You see, I built this stagecoach. I didn't have any blueprints, I just built it.
This summer, he's preparing his stagecoach for a 210-mile trip from the Nebraska border through Kansas to Oklahoma. Why?
Damn if I know.
The only fog in John Hogaboom's life is here, on the road.
I don't like this fog, though, I tell you. And we've been in rain just about every night.
This is what John loves, to show the rest of us the ways of the past.
Oh, it's been nice.
He's done this kind of thing before, only he went across Kansas the long way, east to west. This time, he takes a shorter route, north to south.
But I just like to see the country and see something new. And at 3 miles an hour, you can see everything.
John's horsepower is no match for those who pass at a faster pace, but then they miss what John gets to see.
Oh, yeah. Now, we've come through some hills over there that has something.
My granddad's 89 years old, and this was a way of life for him, and I just wanted to kind of experience what he's always told me about. And I hope someday I can teach my kids what their great-grandpa has lived for all his life.
At 3 miles an hour, they head south on this 4th of July weekend, keeping alive the independent spirit of the American West and showing that at age 89, John Hogaboom's spirit has yet to age.
Oh, I ain't had any surprises yet.
John passed away in 2003 to become part of Kansas's rich history and to join all those other cowboys and pioneers he's so admired. Really a unique man, taking a wagon train, covered wagon, all across the state.
It's a lot different to do it way back when everybody else was doing it, than in 1998 when you're all alone out there, and we admire him.
And he had to compete with cars.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Painting a picture is difficult for many of us, but imagine weaving a picture with thread and a loom.
Well, it certainly takes a knack. In 2005, April Scott was devoting herself full-time to creating amazing fiber tapestries. That made a lot of people wonder, how'd she do that?
Weaving sometimes looks a lot harder than it is.
In her El Dorado studio, April Scott spends hours at her loom creating breathtaking tapestries.
I weave intuitively. That's what works for me. And I'm not following a pattern for the most part. I'm just, the thread just goes through my hands.
Her hands moving through the loom like a concert pianist.
And that, I have to tell you, is one of the most amazing things, is to sit there and just have it flow out of you. Whatever creator is allowing it to happen, it is an amazing, amazing thing when that happens. When you get your nose right down to it, there's hand-dyed ribbons that I dyed, which is amazing to me. And then when you pull back, you think, well, that is a flower. It gives the resemblance of a flower. And sometimes just what look like random stitches, which is how I lay them in kind of intuitively, when you pull back, well, they do look kind of like a flower.
The art hanging in her studio is being readied for a showing at the Coots Museum of Art in El Dorado. These pieces, already sold, have now been returned for a short time so that others may see the intricate nature.
I see the complexity
of this fiber art.
When I don't see one for a while, it's kind of like, well, it's like seeing a piece of your history. And it's quite nice. And you also look at it thinking, oh, I did that.
This piece she's holding was done along with her mentor and friend, Marilyn Linn. A piece of woven fabric that looks three-dimensional.
And it is actually done with a combination of subtle changes in the yarn combinations, but it's also done a great deal with dye and a little paint and then a very subtle stitching of thread to give the nuances.
For most of us, this is technically complex. Well, she uses two simple harness weavings, but she departs from tradition by using bundled thread, where there may be as many as 24 threads of different colors and textures.
From a distance, they look like paintings.
April also teaches this fabric art at Wichita's New City Arts Building in Old Town. Old methods that have lasted centuries and continue to amaze.
And there's no such thing as perfect. You just have to give it your best.
Well, the art was beautiful, but unfortunately wasn't paying the bills.
So April made a career change. She is now director of Wichita's Mid-America All-Indian Center. It's a busy job and doesn't leave her with a lot of time to weave anymore, but we are blessed with what she had woven, if that's how you say it.
I think so.
Had woven before, and now we're blessed to have her as president of the Mid-America Indian Center.
It's fascinating to find out where people end up.
Yeah, isn't it?
After years and decades, and here she's doing a great job at the Indian Center. Congratulations to her.
And I also have one more thing to say.
Yes,
It's
go
too
ahead.
bad that art rarely pays the bills.
Boy, is that true.
Isn't
and
it?
every artist could tell you that the term starving artist is there for a reason.
Absolutely. Well, it's time for us to hit the road. But before we go, make sure you jot down this email address, Hatteberg's People, kpts.org. We love hearing from you.
And we've been getting a lot of nice letters, and we'll be sharing more of those on an upcoming shows. Until next time, I'm Larry Hatteberg.
And I'm Susan Peters. Thanks to Larry for all these great stories, priceless pieces of Kansas history. And thanks to you for watching. We'll see you back here next week.